Right now, there are really two things most people are talking about in the NBA. Firstly, what's going on with Giannis? He hasn't formally requested a trade, but seems like everyone's kind of just expecting him to do so at some point and get traded, right? But also, people are talking about that insane game winner from Halliburton because he is just apparently the most clutch player in the history of the NBA. I guess because he's automatic, right? Dude does not miss. It's insane. Obviously, I mean the statement is probably not true, right? But still, I like to think that it is, at least in this run. It's like it seems like destiny, man. So anyway, another interesting story in the NBA is, well, everyone's talking about Giannis. There's also the underlying KD sweepstakes. So the situations are very different. Firstly, Giannis hasn't formally requested a trade. We don't know what's going on with that. And even if he does request a trade, while I think that the Bucks would try to honor a destination, I think the Bucks should be in a position, and they definitely are, but they should be a team that is looking to get back as much as possible, right? And that's the case for any star trade. That goes without saying. That should be the case. However, KD, for one, is older, things like that, but has a contractual leverage that Giannis does not have. KD has the ability to say, oh, no. If you trade for me, I am not going to stay with you because his contract is shorter, right? Like he's got that flexibility that Giannis doesn't have. Realistically, Giannis, if the Bucks don't want to trade him, they don't have to trade him. And they still got him for what, a couple years? Like it doesn't matter, right? So very different situations. But the KD thing is interesting because a lot of the same destinations are also being linked to KD. Not all of them, like Toronto is heavily linked. Part of that's, I think a big part of it actually is because of the relationship Giannis has with Ujiri, things like that. But you know, a lot of those destinations seem like their fallback option, which is this is an insane thing to have, right? Is Kevin Durant. Imagine having KD, albeit 36, 37, but imagine having KD as your backup plan, right? That's ridiculous, right? So that says something about what these other teams would want. Like the Suns would obviously like to try to get back some of the draft picks if possible. They like to get back some young talent. I don't know if they can accomplish all of that in a KD trade because he is old. He is under like one more year in the contract. Like it's not the best situation to try to get back, you know, a great amount of a haul back in relation to that. But at the end of the day, you are still trading a guy with the cachet of a Kevin Durant, and you would like to try to get back what you can for him. So if they were dealing with the Knicks, there's a report, firstly, that they wouldn't be interested in a Karl Anthony Towns return, which is interesting. I think this piece is interesting because this was also floating out there previous to this report from Gambo here. But if you go back, Cat and Booker are best friends. Really, it's a trifecta. It's those two and D'Angelo Russell, which is also, I guess, like if they pulled this trade off, even the report saying that they don't want to do it, they could realistically put all three of them together. They said they wanted to play together too. Like it's interesting. It is. But you know, they are best friends. So why wouldn't they be interested in the Cat trade? I think Booker, this may just be smoke. Like I think Booker would probably say, go get me Cat. If Cat's on the table, go get me Cat. Booker's their guy. They're going to try to rebuild around him. And I think they would have to do it. Now, is this the best situation for both teams? I think if you're the Knicks, this is interesting because Cat, I think, is really, really good. I thought he performed well, I'd like to say. He was a bit up and down, apparently was injured, things like that. We know he's not a defensive ace anyway, so just take that for what it is. But I thought he had some really big moments in the playoffs for them this year. But if you're the Knicks, you get off of the length of that deal, right? That's interesting to me. I think that's something you'd be concerned about. And you're only pulling for this if you strike out on Giannis, because there's a report today that they have a tsunami type offer. Apparently they're trying to get Jason Kidd up in there, all this stuff. And if you remember correctly, I believe there was reporting, I think it's gotten debunked, but I'll still kind of just throw it out there that Giannis didn't really want him to go. It gets deeper than that, but I think the extension of that, I think Giannis didn't want him to go. I think that's true. He loved him, but I think the extension of that where he really pleaded not to get, like that stuff that they kind of reported, I don't think was true. But you know, I think they have a great relationship between Kidd and Giannis, and they're trying to get Kidd in New York. So I think they're obviously swinging for Giannis, as they should be, right? But if they happen to strike out because there are other destinations, KD seems like a decent fallback plan. However, aside from the monetary aspect of it, I do wonder if you're not just better running it back. Like I wonder about that, right? Like, is this a lateral move? I feel like it's a pretty lateral move. So I think if you're concerned about the money about it, that matters a lot. But it's interesting they're the ones saying that, you know, the Suns are the ones saying we don't want Cat back. I think that's interesting because, again, his relationship with Booker, and I think that they're on the same timeline, Booker and Cat. They were two guys that you could put together. I don't think you're going to win anything, but you could put together and have some pretty fun games and maybe make a couple second round runs, maybe a conference final if things break your way. I think it could work out pretty well. Maybe that's wishful thinking. Let me know in the comments. But aside from them, there are other teams, of course, that have been mentioned, but the Clippers are popping up as a dark horse for KD. So the fun thing about the Clippers is that they actually, in the regular season anyway, I think overperformed. I think that they exceeded expectation. They were actually pretty solid this year, particularly defensively. And they were a really well coached team, of course, really well performing team in the regular season. And it's really cool how they were able to retool this roster around guys like Chris Dunn, Derek Jones. Bogey had a pretty bad year for the most part, but they got these guys in there. Some of the other younger guys that are performing for them. Batum is apparently timeless. I think it was cool how they were able to retool this roster and also dip their payroll. They were the 12th most expensive team after losing Paul George, right? I think they were able to really do that. And so if you look at the next year's salary, the 25-26, which we're basically in this period now, they've got a pretty clean cap sheet. Like they could feasibly swing for a KD if they wanted to do that. And so ideally at that point, you're pairing KD, James, and Kawhi. Now, there's a lot of like injury concern. They're all older stars, mid-30s or whatever. Like that's if you are fully healthy, could you go somewhere? Maybe. Would I bet on it? No. Would it be improbable? Absolutely. Right. If you got back Zubac playing the way he did, all defensive team, I believe, Powell playing the way he did was awesome. You get Dunn and Jones to tie in the defense further, Batum performing the way he does. All of a sudden, you just add the firepower of KD, a guy who can still get you 25, 27 on a night, and it's just automatic, and they just needed more scoring. The offense really let them down this year. I think that could be pretty interesting. I do think that could be pretty interesting. But the question is, what are you giving up in a trade like that? Firstly, I don't know if you're really giving up draft picks. I would fight like hell not to give up draft picks, particularly for KD, sure. But just if you're the Clippers, this is really bad. So the Clippers they've still got a bunch of stuff that they've got going outward. Like, look at this. They're still dealing with the Thunder. The Thunder are swapping this year's pick. The Clippers are getting the 30th pick in the draft this year because the Thunder are stealing their pick. And then 26, OKC will receive the two most or more favorable of its 26 first-round pick, Houston's 26 first-round pick protected for selections 1 through 4, and LAC's 2026 first-round pick. And Washington will receive the least favorable of these. So OKC is still involved. They've still got OKC on the books in 27. Like, my God, OKC just fleeced these guys. But they do have some stuff. You just don't really want to give it up because I think in today's current NBA, I think you need to have this influx of young talent. I think you need this farm system to deal with the CBA so you can have new guys coming in to take the places of your older guys. That's not saying they're like 30 plus, but the guys that you're probably not able to retain because of the salaries. So like they've got the apron system in place, but the player salary keeps going up and up and up. And now you're typically on average paying your starters on teams with players that have been paid, of course, and they're not just on rookie scale deals. You're paying these guys 18 plus. That's a lot of money, 25 plus like that. That's a lot of money. So ultimately you wind up losing some of those guys. So I think that in today's NBA, we talk a lot about the 2 timeline thing. I think everybody needs to be on a 2 timeline right now. Seriously. I think you need to have the guys coming up to replace the guys you're inevitably going to lose, right? And that's just what the CBA is forcing. It doesn't want one team or 2 teams at the top for however long as possible. So ultimately, though, KD, I don't know what's happening here. One thing is for sure, it seems certain that he will be gone. I think that's a safe, extremely safe bet, 10 times more safe than Giannis, because we already know KD wants out. So I think this is going to happen. The question is, where does he land? And like I said in this video, I've said several times in the channel, I do think KD is the type of guy that could land anywhere really and help them out. I just don't know if KD is, of course, your primary offensive weapon on a championship team. In fact, I'm pretty certain he probably can't be that today at 37. I think he needs to be one of your like 1B type guy. And so with that being the case, could that be a Kawhi? We know James struggles in the playoffs. So I don't know if that could be James if you're the Clippers. So do you feel really comfortable with your Kawhi and KD 1-2 punch? I'll tell you something though. 3 years ago, shit. Just 3 years ago, if we go further than that, oh my God. But just even 3 years ago, oh my God, that would have been disgusting. 4 years ago, 5 years, oh my God. So ultimately, though, in today's NBA, I don't know, but we'll see. We'll see what happens. If you guys haven't seen it, check out Trevor's video from earlier today on the Giannis situation. I'll see you over there, or not, because I'm not on it, but hope you enjoy it.